What's up, y'all? We're back for another Q&A series. Today, we get to talk about imposter syndrome. We are joined by none other than Crystal Young. Crystal is a licensed clinical social worker. She's got her master's degree from USC in social work. She's got 7 years of experience in the mental health field and is currently in private practice. She's taking clients, by the way. We'll get you her info just in case you want to tap in with her. But aside from the experience, the degrees, and the excellence, Crystal is just an all-around phenomenal human being who, really works hard to make a difference in our world day in and day out. And so we not only appreciate you being here with us today, but we also appreciate who you are and what you do for this world on a daily basis. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I was so honored when you reached out to me and I spoke with you both. I was super excited to come on. I always want to help when I can. A lot of times people aren't ready for therapy. So if you could drop by and get a video and soak up some knowledge that, you could kind of take with you, replay it, whatever you got to do, I'm here for it. I don't know everything, but I know I've helped some people. So
absolutely,
I'm willing to try.
It's amazing to have you here. Kind of like what you already know about the Protégé too is that we try to bring awareness to these mental health spaces. And imposter syndrome is just one of the biggest ones, I feel like, at least in the legal professional field. And when we first introduced the topic, we actually received a lot of feedback from it. And it wasn't just like the legal professionals reaching out to us and adding to the conversation. So we're just so happy to do this deep dive with you and get this experience that you have. So we kind of just really want to start off with, what is imposter syndrome? Start from the basics, square one.
The basics, there's so much that goes around imposter syndrome. It's interesting, and that's why I'm so excited to have, both of you guys' perspectives and, whoever else watches it, because I think we all take this idea of imposter syndrome and we kind of morph it to like our own lives. But if we're going by definition, just because I know some of us like a little definition here and there, right. I'll pull one for you guys. And then I'm just going to kind of tell you how I explain it to my clients, how we kind of rationalize it out together. But really, imposter syndrome is this idea that it's the persistent inability to kind of believe that you're successful, believe in your own success, believe that any of your success is deserved. You start feeling like nothing you did was legitimate. So like you guys being attorneys, you're like, yep, didn't go to law school, didn't study. I forgot all of that. And then we're here. I think when I was speaking with Chris before, I was letting her know that, sometimes I've had a couple attorneys actually on my caseload before. And sometimes they'll tell me like, I will work hard. They're telling me about these cases they're working on for months. I guess the court date doesn't go as it should. And then they forget. Oh, I'm like, wait, hold on. How do we get here? Like, how do we get where you're just completely discounting all of the steps that it took to get there? And later on, I'm going to kind of talk about, we have to start learning how to kind of measure our own success based off our own standards. And a lot of times we don't, because that's difficult. It's difficult for us for a variety of reasons. It's difficult for, different people for a variety of reasons. But really, it's this idea, it's this like psychological space that you're in, this occurrence that tells you doubt yourself, doubt your skills, doubt your talents, doubt your accomplishments, because you're internalizing it. So in short, it really is feeling fraud, like inadequate, like you're fraud. Okay, you're fraud. Your brain's telling you you're fraud. And then you run with it. Just because we're here, I would love to know just where do you guys' feelings of inadequacy fall? How does it kind of spill out, in your field and what you do, or just not even being an attorney, like outside of that? Because I know there's a tons of other things as well, like I want to drop too, and I can keep going, y'all, so y'all can jump in, because I'll be like, let's go. My mind just goes. But a lot of times we feel inadequate in friendships, relationships. Sometimes we think about it in that professional setting of just like, professionally, I'm doubting myself, but it comes in different ways. It comes in different like umbrellas, different categories. And I think that's why imposter syndrome is one of the biggest it's one of the biggest things we deal with, but it's also one of the biggest fraudulent things we deal with, because it's like a fraudulent idea. We make it up. We make it up based off these standards that we set. So back to my question of do you guys feel inadequate? What does that kind of look like in you guys day to day, or, whatever you guys are into?
Yeah, I would say, like, to jump off right off the bat, because you hit it on the head for me, is when you were saying how did I get here? I ask that question sometimes when I'm like looking around and I'm like doing these agreements or handling a negotiation. And I'm like, how did I end up on the other side of this table? Like, how did I end up as a lawyer? Like it's been a dream my entire life, but at the end of the day, you're just like, I have my license and you're like, wow, I feel like I still don't know as much as I should be to be qualified to hold this position kind of thing. Yes. So that's where like it is inadequacy, but it's also just like, how did I get here? And I forget everything that I've done all the way up until this
point. All the hard work, all the things you did to get there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. All of the memes you saved to like get through these and motivate yourself, and the songs and the late night calls, the texting, all that we forget. Me too, as a therapist, a lot of times I'll get a lot of validation from clients. I'll get a lot of feedback. Even when Crystal's like, hey, do this, I'm like, I'll jump on it. And I'm like, I text her like, I'll jump on it. But now I'm just kind of like, you get nervous. You start to doubt yourself a lot. I know one thing for me is I went to USC. So I think going to USC, a lot of times when you look around, you don't see a lot of people that look like me. You don't see a lot of people that look like us. And so I think another feeling of inadequacy is just like, especially in our spaces and our fields, I know with mine as well, it's difficult finding, I feel like I could drop it, so I'm gonna drop it. There's no way to hold it back. Black therapists, people in our profession finding, Black attorneys or whatever that looks like, I think it's very difficult. And so when you're in it, then it's like, oh, here we go. Like, what do we do? You're in it, you're knee deep in it. And just those times I see it as, imposter syndrome come up as well. Crystal, have you kind of experienced it?
Yeah, I feel like, as an attorney, I feel like you're responsible for a lot of stuff, right? Like big things, right? So as I try to venture off and do my own thing, it's like, okay, I've got this client who needs X done. And it's all on me, or like, or the people who's helping me out to get it done. But, depending on what field you're in, you could be handling, I don't know, somebody's house or somebody's estate, stuff like that.
We got dentists, everybody, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people also too, even there, we go outside of even those type of professions. You really can feel that in any type of profession, whether it's like, dang, I really, wish I could be at a different place, but I got to start here at this job. Now you're questioning yourself of, dang, I got to start at this space before I get to this space. You see it in all different types. In fact, when I was just kind of doing some research on it, about 70% of people we know or ourselves deal with imposter syndrome. That's huge. That means,
that means a whole lot of people.
A whole lot of people. That means half of us on this call, and all three of us already say like,
some of them, because I need to know like how do you
get through it, and that's one of the interesting parts, not to jump forward, but one of the interesting parts of it, a lot of clients ask me, well, how do I get over it? And I was talking to somebody today and I was like, one of the most, and I have a TED talk that I want to leave with you guys that I thought was so great. I'll leave with you guys afterwards. One of the things I don't think we understand sometimes is how the power of our mind and the control of our thoughts. I get a little deep. So again, it's a therapist in me, so I'll try to keep it at a level. I don't want to take you out of therapy right now, but we have to understand the power of our thoughts, because the power of our thoughts can lead us to do some very dangerous things. And a lot of times we don't understand how the trouble our thoughts could get us in. And I say that to say is that we have to realize the power of it. Sometimes the power of a thought could take us out. We literally will say, I don't want to be here anymore, so I'm going to not be here anymore. And I don't think a lot of people sometimes realize when you're saying, I can't do it, and how did I get here? And, I shouldn't be here, or I have these people's lives in my hands. When we're saying that over and over and over again, what are we creating? We're creating a habit now. We created a script. Now we've created this thing that we've replayed. And so every time we're doing something, it's like action, imposter syndrome loaded. So when that happens, well, now what do? We're spiraling. Now we're on like a wheelbarrow where we're just, so what happens? You got to kind of fall to kind of catch your break, unless somebody catches you, or unless, use a coping skill, use something. And so we have to understand the power of our thoughts. You have to take a moment. We're quick, we move fast. We don't sit, we're not grounded. And funny enough, when we talk about being grounded, we're virtual. So a lot of times we're dressed up from half up. And recently, I used to kind of put socks on because my feet would get cold, but I hate socks, or I would cover my feet with the blanket, and I would keep a heater by my feet. Really see, I said, wait a minute, let me take my shoes off. Even right now I have my shoes off, and just being grounded, I could feel the floor. It just keeps me going a little bit. And I say that because a lot of times it's control. So now that I know my feet are grounded, I know I'm safe. I'm in control of what I'm doing. I'm in control of my conversation. I'm in control of what I'm doing right now. So it's these little mental games that we have to kind of tweak, these mental thoughts we have to tweak, because essentially that's what it is. We're in our brain, and I'm going to talk about this radical hero in a little bit. We're in our brain though, of it's like a video game, we're just kind of waiting. I don't really play, I don't know what it's called, when you're just kind of waiting and you're moving a little bit, but that's what the brain is doing. And we're like, all right, press X and that means do this, or whatever, press Y and that means do this. It's all control. So the biggest thing when people are like, how do I do it? We have to really get back to where's the control of the mind. And I'm going to talk about that in a second, but not to go all the way there for a second, but it's just very interesting, to me, of just like, we have to scale back for a second. We have to realize that a lot of it is just here. We have to get out our minds and into our lives. So that's just there for, that second, but I dropped some more on you later, but I do want to kind of, before we move on from like, what is imposter syndrome, just maybe drop some reasons. Sometimes people are like, why? It could be a variety of reasons. I could ask, all three of us could have 3 different reasons why we feel it, right? But a lot of times if we're just going by facts, if I could just drop some of that, childhood trauma, a lot of times if we see it in violent relationships, whether it be verbal abuse, physical abuse, what does that do? It's minimizing the self-esteem. So it's pushing that down. Again, a lot of things in childhood, self-esteem in childhood, constant criticism. So a lot of times what I've learned, and I'm definitely not saying this is for everybody, but my experience and the attorneys that I've had on my caseload, a lot of times it's overcritical. You're going to be a lawyer because that makes good money. You need to do this because that's how you're going to set yourself up in life. So now you have this constant need of pressure. So constant pressure, whether it be from family, friends, childhood, when it's like order of your siblings, if you have them, you're at the top. So that means I got to perform. My brother or my sister is a lawyer. They're a doctor. So, what does that mean? What should I do? What does that mean I do now? So it comes from a lot of that. A lot of times it could be in our own head. Society nowadays is rough, especially now, the society we are in. We've got so much social media to compare us to. And, there's so many people trying to do so many things. And then we go from like, career could definitely be one. So just things of that. I just want to drop some, these are where it can come from, not to name all of them, but just to name a few. That's where some of them could kind of come in from. So.
And I feel like a lot of us too, that even people that may be listening to this, because when you said pressure, I was like, the pressure of being first gen in our field. Yes. You know what I mean? You have to be the first one to be successful. Yeah. Not just being the first lawyer, you have to be a successful lawyer.
You got to make sure you up there, okay? It's interesting because you carry this weight. So now you have this called like this phantom weight. It's not, you can't see it, but it's like there. And maybe nobody even said it. You could have had the most wholesome childhood, but it's there. Yeah. And now you've created a thought habit. Thought habits are real. You create this thought habit and then boom, now we're in a spiral. Now, a lot of times what I say is with imposter syndrome, a lot of times we're at this very, very deep hole and we had a ladder, we just pulled the ladder down. All you have to do is throw the ladder back up and climb up it. But no, we choose to just pull it down. And that's okay sometimes. We can sit with the ladder, we got to sit with it, we got to feel it. But at a point in time, after dwelling, what do we do? And I always see when I was in school, when I was in grad school, professor says, sometimes you have to be like water and just flow. What happens in a river when water gets stuck on a log? It's going to go 2 ways, maybe 3. It's going to stay. It's going to go one way or it's going to go another. But it's going to figure it out. It's not going to panic. And if it does panic, it'll figure it out because it got to keep going, right? It has to eventually figure out how to go around it. And I never forgot when she told me that. I'll always be anxious, always panic, like, I have to know all this. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It's like, chill. You don't know until you really know. You got to just be easy for a second. So I always remembered that. So I leave you with that, and just kind of remember you have to be like water sometimes. And if you're feeling like, I can't do it, or, in the video, in the TED Talk, she says sometimes imposter syndrome feels like somebody's always looking over your shoulder, like that teacher walking around looking at your test, like, move, please. You have to silence that, right? You have to silence it, in the hero in you has to kind of come out and kind of take over it. So just a little something, where we could go. If you want more, email so you can be my client. No, but yeah, that's just a little bit with that. I have, and kind of move on to some signs and red flags. But if you guys have anything you want to say with that, but if not, I have some signs just for you guys to kind of look for. If you want to move on to that, cool.
Yeah, let's jump into that.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, when do you guys start realizing that imposter syndrome is like there? What do you guys start feeling? What are some of the recognizable flags that you see?
I procrastinate.
That's on my list. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Avoidance.
Avoidance.
Best friend is avoidance. So when you're anxious about something, you're going to avoid it. So when anxiety gets bigger, the hungrier it gets, the more you're going to avoid it, the bigger that's going to grow. So the bigger that you let that anxiety grow, the more you feed it. Well, you're going to keep procrastinating. That's a good one.
Yeah.
What about you, Sean? What about you?
Yeah. I feel like someone I worked with mentioned this to me. It's like when you can tell someone's anxious because they just start reacting to everything instead of right. Just right away, not even really thinking it too. Like sometimes you do need to take a beat and just like think about it.
Yeah.
Before you just like, well, I don't want to seem like I'm not doing anything or I don't know what I'm doing. So let me just go.
Yes. Yes. It's kind of like when you're at, I don't know if you guys are experienced, but when you're somewhere out and the person comes in a bar, in a room, and they're just overly like, hey, here I am, kind of looking at it because they're anxious. They do that because in the back end, they're like, are people going to like me? I'm nervous. You know, are people going to want me? Are they going to expose me? Are they going to tell that I'm nervous? That's a lot of times what happens. So that definitely is another one. So you exude this overly self-confidence and it's like, okay, calm down for a second. Like what happened? That's because you're in fight or flight mode. So it's like something's coming after you. You feel like, I'm being eaten. So let me just try to figure out what to do, right? So I'm either gonna run or I'm just gonna, the ego. Sometimes we have to silence the ego. Ego is good sometimes. But sometimes the ego gets so big, it's not silenced and it kind of takes over. And then it's like we're spiraling again. It's just like, we got to slow down for a second. We got to pull back. Some other ones are, again, being overcritical. Self-doubt is a big one. Start when the ego gets bigger than that radical hero voice. So it's like, okay, where the ego is like, you can't do this. Don't do this. Avoid doing it. You're not good at this. Call somebody else because they're better at this.
Ego side?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So when you're doing that, that's like that. That's that side that's telling you when the ego's too big, when the ego's too big, it's telling you, don't do this, avoid doing this. Like, because what happens is, I wish I had this thing. If I'll pull it up, if I have a second, I'll find it in a second. What happens is we have a healthy ego, but then we have an ego that sometimes gets ahead of us. When the ego gets ahead of us, well, sometimes we lose control. And so then the ego starts to take over the control. And then we're just like, okay, well, what happens with that? Sometimes the ego can be evil. Sometimes the ego can tell us don't do certain things. Some of the egos say do things that we shouldn't do, those type of things. Another one is the inability to be realistic. So sometimes when things get very unrealistic for you, so you just kind of start really doubting and you're like unrealistically assessing your skills, assessing your progress. That's another big one when you're like that overcritical, but then now you're over analyzing. So it's like, well, what's really going on here? Like I'm getting ahead of myself again. That ego is getting kind of too big for what we're doing right now. I think it varies from person to person. I want to go back really quickly. There are actually different types of imposter syndrome. And I actually learned this quite recently. We've got the superhero.
More than one?
More than one of these. You got to figure out which one you're talking to you. We got this idea of the superhero, which is like, you overwork yourself to kind of to make up for the feeling of inadequacy. We have this idea, this natural genius, and all these are very loosely, these are what, people theorize. And so I'm like, sometimes it's good to kind of give yourself a little bit more to go after. And also too, I feel like when you have categories, it helps us compartmentalize. One thing I've learned is that people have a difficult time compartmentalizing. We put everything in one. I always tell my clients when I see them, I said, look, your brain is like this. My job is to support you to get it like this. Now, see, it still overlaps sometimes, but do you see how you can see where each of my fingers go? Do you see how it's a little bit more organized rather than this? I'm all over. So that's what I try to say. This is compartmentalization. Everything has a file cabinet. So then you have the ability to go into control. You open it up, you close it. You open it up, you close it. Going back to some of the other types, there's this natural genius. So this is set these huge goals. And that's another thing with goals. We set very unrealistic goals. We cannot do that because usually when we set a goal, it's based off someone else's metric. So what are we doing then? We put these unrealistic achievements on. So in the middle, when we're trying to fill that void, imposter syndrome comes in. So now it's difficult to attain that goal. You try everything in the world, but it's like a dog chasing his tail. It's never going to catch it. That's what happens when we kind of overachievement comes, that perfectionism versus neurotic. Perfectionism is okay, but when it gets neurotic, now we're on the other end of that.
Yeah.
Now we're getting unrealistic. Now we're getting in the water of like, ooh, it's dark. You can't really see what's under you. We got to come back a little bit. We have the expert, which is never satisfied with their level of understanding. So you always want more. And it's good to want more. We always want to learn more. I'm sure in your field, it's always good to learn more, but we also, and one of the things I'm going to teach you at one of the tips, we have to give ourselves, I call it an affirmation resume. So we have a resume that looks good. And it's like, yep, you know, Crystal, you have this, you've worked here, you do this, you won this case, A, B, C, and D. But what about 6 years ago, you were not here. 6 years ago, you were not an attorney. Did you ever stop to remind yourself of that resume? And hold on a second, let me ground myself and tell me 6 years ago, I didn't have a case. I couldn't walk in a law firm. You know, 3 years ago, you know, Sean, I don't know if you had you guys' you know, your whole system that you guys have now, your mentorship, your program. You don't ever stop to remind yourself, wait a minute, what is the affirmation resume? What's the resume that I am affirming myself and telling myself? Last Friday, you know, you didn't have that meeting maybe that you had on Monday, you know, that's another meeting you're invited into. We don't remind ourselves of that. Because why? We're always reminding ourselves what we don't have. One of the things I'm going to teach you is, and one of the things of being mindful and just kind of removing the judgments is, we have to meet the needs of the situation we are in rather than meeting the needs of the situation we wish we were in. So a lot of times we're trying to meet the needs of the situation we wish we were in, so we're never getting it. So it always feels like I'm not doing enough. The perfectionist comes in where it's like, again, never satisfied, never happy. And then we have the soloists, the ones we don't ask for help. I could do it by myself. I'm nervous to ask for help. They're going to think I'm not as smart. They're going to think that I'm not. Yeah, exactly. You know, they're going to think I'm not as adequate. Like, oh, you know, wait a minute. I don't want to ask somebody for help. That's now you got that. Now you got that in your mind. Oh, you know, they asked me for help that one time. They're not as smart. No, I actually am smart because I'm asking for help. And that is why, you know, because like they say, that's real when they say the only question that is dumb is the one that's not asked. Because if you didn't need to know it, better yet, we have to understand that when we ask a question and we're nervous to ask the question, it doesn't just help you, it helps the other person because the other person gets to explain it. So you're helping out more than just one person in that situation, but we don't think about that. We just think about, I'm so nervous. I don't want to ask. They're going to think I'm done. They probably not even think about us. That's another thing. We always think
not even think about you.
That's funny. I usually tell I want to remind you that they're probably not thinking about you. You know, I'm thinking about you. I'm really concerned, but I can almost bet the person that you're worried about is not worried about you. You have to let it go.
That's funny.
You have to let
that's a good one. That's a real good one.
Yeah, I let that one go. But those are just some signs and red flags. You guys have any of those that you really resonate with? Do you guys have any of those? Any more you want to add to that?
I feel like, you know, you mentioned a couple. There's a mix sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, some days I'm the soloist and other days I'm asking too many questions or, you know, procrastinating or whatever it is. So yeah, it's a mix for me. A couple of them resonated.
Yeah. I think
you had me at here. I was like, yep.
Yep.
Wow. That's me.
Yeah, no, so that's it, you know, and that's the thing too. I think also we have to remind ourselves is that we have to be okay with not doing the job we wanted. Again, it goes back to expectations. I did the job. It may not have been what I wanted, but I did the job. So I have to accept where I'm at right now. We don't ever accept our present moment because it's difficult. I don't either. I'm always like, oh, what can I do? Let me figure this out. Let me like push forward. I never just take time to sit. That's another reason why I take off on Fridays now. Because I was doing so much that my friends always laugh at me like, you take off and then you go run errands. Like, just sit down for a second, you know, validate, praise yourself for getting to that moment, you know, because for me, a lot of times you think the more progress we make, we think production means success. But no, sometimes we have to rest. Sometimes we are overproductive and we have to rest. And that is productive. Rest is productive. You have to remind yourself. Validating yourself is productive, but we never really do that, right? But into that, I can drop some tips if you would like.
Go crazy. It's your world.
You'll like some tips. One of the first things, again, going back to when I said people probably aren't worried about you, you got to check yourself. We forget to do this a lot. We rely on other people to check us, other things to check us. Oh, this deadline is going to check me. You know, I'm going to do it because I have a deadline, or I'm going to do it because I have to show up, or I'm going to do it. No, you're going to do it because you have to do it, right? That's one of the biggest things with imposter syndrome is you're telling yourself you're inadequate, you're not adequate enough. So then what do we have to do? What's the reverse of that? You have to check yourself until, again, it goes back to the power of the mind. Therapy always helps. A lot of mindfulness, a lot of times, especially in the professions that are very quick and you move a lot and there's a lot of different components, you have to practice a moment of mindfulness. Sometimes for me, mindfulness is, I have a dog and sometimes I won't take him outside when I go outside because I just need a moment by myself to just feel the air. Just a quick breather, just little things. We think sometimes mindfulness is meditation. I don't meditate because I'm not trying to be sitting on my feelings all the time like that. So I'm just a therapist that just doesn't always do it. I could do a quick one, but I have other ways that I like to meditate. So that ain't one of them. I don't like to listen to things and listen to people. Now, where I could give a great meditation and I can give a great script for a meditation, for me, meditation just doesn't work. Other people, it may. Speaking of meditation, Netflix, if you have Netflix users out there, there's like a Headspace app. I think it's still on. It's really good if you want to just put it on your, probably watching Netflix anyway. So just kind of type in Headspace and it's free. I think the app on your phone costs. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But the one on TV, if you have Netflix, you got it. And they have really quick, short meditations. Those might be more. Stretching, moving is another good one just to kind of, again, be mindful. Imposter syndrome, it's usually when it's coming up is because you're not present with yourself. You're in that unrealistic reality. Another one I kind of told you earlier was that working a personal affirmation resume. I literally will have, I have a note. It's a little unorganized now. Otherwise I would share it because sometimes my mind just really needs to talk to myself very nicely. But I have a note and it's literally my resume and I keep it on my notes that I could see all the time. And what it does, it just reminds me that I am that person. Yeah, I am. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes. You have to talk to yourself because nobody else is going to do it. And I write down little things that I've done, maybe since January or February, or, March wasn't the best month, but guess what? March 21st, I started my own private practice. So I remind myself of those things because a lot of times we don't. And then that's when we start setting those unrealistic expectations for ourselves. Another one is setting realistic goals. We can't set 50 million goals on one thing. Also, when you write tasks for yourself, don't put 50 things on there. Have multiple lists, but only have, I would say, 4 or 5 goals on one. You can't have all these goals on it because then it becomes unattainable. It becomes too much. Now it's too big. The bag is too big. Too many people can get in. Too many thoughts can get in. It has to be closed. Has to be closed at the top. So I would just recommend setting more realistic goals.
Is it a daily, a weekly? How would you gauge when is it too much? Should we set a goal 5 per day? Or
I am a big person on going day by day because if we're talking about being present, you have to go day by day. So what I do is I'll set daily goals. And then if I need to get something done at the end of the week, I'll set a week goal. But my week goal is not going to have 4 or 5 things because I already got daily goals. My week goal is going to be something big. It's going to be something end of tomorrow for me, I want to make sure that all my intakes are signed, locked, and dated. So that means at that point, if I sign all my intakes and do all that, that's a big portion of me getting some paperwork out the way. That's a longer goal for me. I can't do that and work on that, every single day. It's just too much. So by the end of the week, I just want to make sure that throughout the week, I was able to achieve that one big goal. Smaller goals during the day could be, I'm just going to use mine, for a second. Smaller goals to me on a personal note, because I'm not talking about this in a client setting, but smaller goals for me is I'm trying to take less clients during the day because I'm not able to be as mindful and as present. So daily, what I'm doing is by the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock mark, I'm judging how am I feeling? I'm standing up, I'm walking around. How's my mental health? What is that looking like for me? So by the end of the day, and this is my short-term goals. I just started this last week because I'm I'm taking too many clients during the day. Hold on a second. So one of my short-term goals that I set for my day is by 3 o'clock, usually 4, it just depends on my caseload that day. Where am I at a mental health check-in? What I found myself doing because I was so not present with myself, I was actually tapping out at about the 3 o'clock mark. So that may mean that I have shorter days, but open up my caseload. I didn't realize that because I was setting too big of a goals. I was like, I want to take 40 clients a week. Whenever that looked like, I'm just going to do it. That was me I was taking 11 clients a day. Talk to 11 people a day back to back.
Oh my God.
Yeah, tough.
And do it. Short terms on a personal note is, a lot of times for me, I want to make sure that when I go to sleep, I have no dishes in the sink. Okay. Sometimes I'm tired and that just doesn't happen. So I spend 3 days out the week, make sure that those dishes are out the sink. So then by the end of the week, I'm like, all right, Crystal, cool. Like out of 7 days, you got 3 days. And usually I do it more because now I made a habit of it. So it's just those short-term goals. So sometimes we have to scale back a little bit and we have to do that. We also have to set other goals, like little goals, like, I don't know, by the end of the month, I want to be able to buy myself something. I want to be able to reward myself. I want to be able to take myself somewhere. I want to be able to get myself a massage. We forget about those. Y'all don't put that type of stuff on your goal list.
Right.
I need to put more massage.
Everybody talk. I'm talking to right now out there. When was the last time you put on your goal list? This week, my goal is to go get a massage.
Treat yourself. For sure.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes I get bogged down in whatever I'm doing. I feel like I have way too much work to, make sure the dishes are in the sink, so if it's, our dishes are clean, so that really being disciplined in saying, no, I'm going to stick to this so that I can complete this goal. That's hard sometimes, because it's like I have so much work to do. You know what I'm saying? Like,
you feel guilty because you're not getting the work done, right? Now the imposter syndrome comes up in. Oh, wait, I'm not productive. I'm not getting the work done. The hours are getting the best of me.
Right.
I only got a couple more hours. But what happens is that's going to run its course. How long can you put the work as a priority? If you don't put yourself as a priority, then you don't take care of yourself. Well, what's going to happen? It's like in an airplane. You got to put the oxygen mask on you first before anybody else. And it's the same thing. And I know it's difficult. It's difficult. I literally will tell you this. I'm going to close the computer and I'm probably going to do some work and I really shouldn't because I should be off on Friday. So I'm telling you, I'm very open. I'm very vulnerable when it comes to that. It's difficult for me. And as I'm a therapist, I'm teaching this every day. I'm practicing this every day, but habits are very hard to create. They're hard. They're easy to break. It's easy. I could say, I, don't want to do this anymore. That's easy, right? It's easy to give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the easier way out, right? That's what the brain tells us to do. You give up. Another thing I was telling you earlier was creating your own measurement of success and not others. You have to, so important. You have to create like, okay, I get there's goals and there's bigger goals, especially in certain professions. Like, for me, one day, I don't want to just do private practice. I want people working under me. I want to be able to mentor. I want to be able to supervise, right? But first of all, I got to measure that to my own success. There's a lot of people that I know that are already doing it. So usually where our mind goes is, okay, by the end of the year, I want to do it. That's not feasible for me. Now, my brain will tell me, yeah, you got to do this because I'm not going to be successful. What's going to happen? But I have to sit down and say, well, calm down. You're still learning private practice. You still got to learn how you want to do things, how you want things to go or what way or what not. So a lot of times I had to realize, scale back and create your own measurement, create your own level of success. And then you can incorporate everybody else's gauge, here and there. But first you got to start the foundation off. Otherwise you're going to keep sitting on wet soil and you're going to keep falling through. Yeah. It's going to keep feeling like you're struggling.
I feel like that's usually young attorneys go through because again, once we, like I was saying in the beginning, like once we get that license, we're like, all right, I could go off and practice anything I wanted.
Yep.
Do I know everything? Definitely not. And so when you start to do that and you just like, that's where the spiral can begin for a lot of us in the legal profession. I'm sure in like other professions too, when you're first starting out, because you've done so much schooling and stuff up until this point, and you've had so many like trials and stuff at this point already. And you're just like, I feel like I still don't know anything.
Yeah. And that's how it feels.
Go to work every day.
And then, and then if I could be perfectly honest, on the other side of that, you don't know everything. So then it's now finding you like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know everything, but you know enough because you're there. You know enough to be in the position to make the choice of, oh, I could go where I want to go. And we forget about that part. That's that forgetting about how we got there. We forget about the journey.
Right.
All the time. We just remember us crossing the finish line, but we forget how hard we just ran. We were running. we're running. We forget that part. We have to praise ourselves sometimes for that. That's the best part sometimes if you look at it. It feels good to rejoice at the finish line, but sometimes the best part was like that journey of kind of getting there. Were you gonna say something, Chris?
Yeah, you touched on a little bit the concept of you finding what works for you, right? And it seems like when you set with your tips, it seems like when you set, they're very probably individualized, right? What works for you.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, I always felt like when I was working within a system, it was harder to be like, because I'm on somebody else's deadline, like, harder to say, okay, maybe if I have this certain assignment that I'm supposed to get done in X amount of time, and I don't know, one of my things that makes me helps me work better is to work 30 minutes on and 5 minutes off. Like, maybe Sean could speak to this too. Like, how do you work within a system and like still hold true to what works for you?
This is, goes back on intention. And I'm always very big on, you have to be very intentional what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so when you have those deadlines, and then for me, this is just, from, of course, my opinion and how I would see it. When you have those deadlines of working in a system, because I come from a system based as well. And that was one of my biggest things when I used to be in, fresh out of grad school, I worked at a place, won't name drop, but y'all that know me, y'all know. Boot camp, okay? They thought I wasn't gonna make it, but I did.
Okay,
so,
let's go.
It was difficult there. It was very difficult, it was very trying because I got lost in their system. And I got lost in getting lost in me trying to meet their needs and their accommodation. I was forgetting about the only thing that I have to do is show up for this deadline. The only thing you are expected to do is show up for your supervised deadline. They say May 24th, it's my birthday. They say May 24th is the deadline. That's all you need to worry about is the deadline. And the journey for you to get there is up to you. They didn't tell you to stay up all night and work 24 hours a day. That's the expectation that they may have put on you, but they didn't tell you to do that. They're not saying stay up all night and figure this out and don't eat and don't sleep and don't drink. That's on you. So it goes back to taking accountability. And that's another thing about tips. We have to take accountability for our own, what we put out there, for our own action. And so when we work in a system, the only thing in the system is a deadline. How you get there, you have to set those goals. You have to be intentional on how to get there to reach that deadline. The only thing they're giving you is the deadline and probably the tools, the paper, here's the case, here's the people, what you got to do. Now make it work. And that's going to be up to you. And that's when you start finding your flow, your rhythm, right? That's when you start finding, oh, okay, I got this. Wait a minute, I do got this. I'm going to make this work for me. And that's when I started to realize back when I was in grad school, I was trying to make it work for them. I was burning out. I was frustrated. And then I said, okay, well, hold on. I'm going to do this for me. And I realized I'm still getting the work done for you. Right. So I made it work for me now. So now both of us are winning here. I really don't care if you're winning at that point because now I prioritize myself. But in those spaces where we do, we really do care about just kind of that system and working together because I think there's so many healthy work environments. And now that I'm in a healthy environment, you definitely can see the difference. You have to remember that they're only telling you one thing. What is due? What is the assignment? What is the goal? You figure out the rest. And that's what we forget. We want them, okay, they told me the goal. Now what's their expectation? How do they want me to do it? That's not what they said. Here's the goal. Here's the foundation. Yeah, I'm sure you have rules. We got rules, right? We got to stop at the red light so we all don't crash. Right. But once we go, now we go. Now we could wait at the red light for 3, 4, 5 seconds, or some people just take off. At that point, once the light turned green, it's up to you. Right. You do it how you want to do it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? To answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. That's something I really struggle with, and that's perfect advice.
I want to drop a little, just if I could share my screen with you, it's a work, like it's basically a house skill. And DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy. One of the best things is, and DBT is just how to be mindful and how to be present. But the best thing is taking this non-judgmental stance. And I feel like one of the biggest things in imposter syndrome is what? Self-judgment, critical judgment. So I wanted to just kind of, it's three little parts. So I'll just kind of review it. It's very self-explanatory. That's why I love DBT. I am certified in DBT, but I love DBT because you don't really need therapy to understand it. Sometimes you don't want to think about what your therapist is saying or these intricate ideas. You just need to get out the hot water fast. You just need to get out of that moment quick, right? You need to get out of that imposter syndrome very quickly. So I like this. It's a bunch of it. There's a how skill, the what skill, but I really like this how skill. So if I could share my screen, and I can email this to you also if anybody wants it. But you can also Google this, just type in how skill DBT. Anybody watching, and you can pull it. Yeah, I think I have to, I got it. You guys are already, my bad, share screen.
Got it.
Okay. Share. You guys can see this?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the how skill. This is, again, comes from dialectical behavioral therapy. I encourage everybody to YouTube. There's so many great videos about how to be mindful in DBT. It's a great practice. It's really good if you can get a therapist that has it, and you can go over the concepts, but I'll drop you guys with this. I'll go over it just because I know I've been talking to y'all a lot, but y'all could pause. It's funny too. Pause, write down, take notes, rewind. But we have this thing. So these are the 3 steps. You're going to do these things in these 3 orders to reduce the judgment and keep a wise mind. I'm also going to teach you about wise mind in 1 second. I should have pulled it up here. I'll pull it up in a second. So we have these things: non-judgmental stance, one mindfully in the moment and effectively. And you want to practice all these kind of simultaneously, all these at once. And so this is kind of the steps you take just to reduce the judgments, kind of reduce those negative and critical self-thoughts. So we see, but don't evaluate. Take a non-judgmental stance, just the facts. Focus on the what, not the good, not the bad, strictly facts. That reduces then some of the criticism, because now we're working off facts. Yes or no, black or white, what are we doing here? Unglue your opinions. So you unglue your opinions from facts. Also remember, feelings aren't facts. Feelings are temporary. So what you're feeling now is not how you're going to feel later. So you want to unglue your opinions from like what the facts are, from the who, the what, the when, the where, because then our mind kind of spirals. We want to accept each moment. I love this one because it's like, if you put a blanket on a lawn and in a place where you get all the seasons, nothing's really going to happen to the blanket. It's just going to adapt, right? It's going to let the snow fall. It's going to let the rain fall on it. It's going to let the birds eat it, whatever. It's not going to get up and move, right? It's just going to accept each moment. A lot of times we try to change each moment. We don't accept it and then try to change the future. We so worried about it, we get caught up right now. You get into the same thing, you drive yourself insane, because then you're doing the same thing over and over, expecting the same result, not expecting different results, and nothing's going to happen. Acknowledge the helpful, the wholesome, but don't judge it. When you find yourself judging, don't judge your judgments. Take a moment and say, all right, I'm judging myself. I'm really feeling this imposter syndrome. I'm really feeling inadequate. All right, cool. Now let me move on, because that's not true, right? So don't judge your judgments. We always try to like, oh, you get into this hyper fixation mode and you're just like, let me fix. Just take a second. Do one thing at a time. When you're eating, eat. You know, if you, Crystal, want to start washing the dishes, 5 minutes off, go wash the dishes real quick. Take a walk, you know, do something, do a dance. I like to do music breaks. I have concerts all the time. I went on my
yes, that's
going up. I am going up during my breaks. Do each thing with all of your attention. You know, a lot of times, Crystal, I think you said it earlier, you were just like, you know, you have this kind of program, you're working in this system, you know, you have your way of doing things. You have to do what works for you and focus on that space. If you're focused on somebody else's goals, somebody else's deadlines, you're not focus on what you're doing right now. So you're missing it. You're missing something you could learn. You know, there's nothing anybody could tell me. You can't watch a show and be on your phone. You're going to miss something. You're going to miss the color of the sky. You're going to miss something flying by. You're going to miss something because you're not present. Being present is really important. If other actions, thoughts, or strong feelings distract you, let go of distractions and go back to what you're doing. It's okay to start over. We forget that. You know, we think, oh, we're starting over, we're failures. No, you're just starting over to regroup, recharge. And concentrate your mind. And that's just very self-explanatory. If you're doing 2 things at once, do one thing. Effectively, focus on what works. Do what needs to be done in the situation. Let's focus on right then and there. Play by the rules. Play by your rules. Set some rules for yourself. Play by the best rules that you can set for yourself and act as skillfully as you can. And then that way, you can meet the needs of the situation you're in and not the situation you wished you were in. And then let go. Let go of vengeance, useless anger, righteousness, all that arrogance, the big ego that's telling us to minimize. Let it go. I know letting go is hard, but once you practice this, it's so helpful. It's so helpful. I'm going to pull some up real quick. I know y'all can see what I'm Googling over here. Don't be looking at my cheat sheets.
No, it's nice to know that you can just easily find these things too, because I wouldn't know.
Yes, you see, I'm Googling y'all. So don't say I'm not dropping gems.
No, that's the first.
Because I'm getting all the homework. This is what I drop in my
And it's free.
It's free. Therapist aid is free. Yeah, I like therapist aid. Listen, this is the wise mind, and I'll wrap it up in a second. We have 3 states of mind. We have the emotional, the wise, and the reasonable. A lot of my lawyers stick in the reasonable mind. You guys are so reasonable. I'm like, hello, there's emotion here. Take a break, calm down, chill. You guys are still doing your thing. And then he has the wise mind. The wise mind is a combination of 2. So a lot of us, a person using their reasonable mind when they approach a situation intellectually, right? It sounds good. They plan and they make decisions based off facts. But what happens with a reasonable mind, we can stay stuck. So if things don't work out, now you're stuck on it not working out. So now you're like, okay, well, I'm trying to be too reasonable, where now I'm so stuck on it, now I can't get out of it. Then we have this emotional mind, and that's used when feelings control a person's thoughts and behaviors. They might act out impulsively. I think you spoke about the impulsiveness sometimes earlier, or little regard for consequence. But the wise mind, which is a combination of both, the wise mind refers to a balance between the reasonable and the emotional halves. They're able to recognize and respect their feelings while responding to them in a rational manner. If you get the concept of wise mind, it really reduces all of that self-criticism. And those are the 2, like the biggest things of like just that non-judgmental stance, and then that wise mind of trying to be as present as you can to decrease, pick something else up. So you can kind of decrease all those imposter syndromes, all those symptoms that imposter syndromes kind of induce, right? But yeah, I just think, with imposter syndrome, those 3 states of mind are very important. You have to talk to yourself. You have to tell yourself, you have to kind of stand up to yourself. You have to let yourself know, like, I am my hero. I am my own hero. I'm going to take over all the other voices in my head. A lot of times we're scared of ourselves. I don't know if you guys do it, but I realized I wasn't doing it. So now every time I see myself, usually in the mirror in the morning, I talk to myself, what's up? Like, you're going to have a good day today. When you get out the bed, today is a bad day. No, I'm thankful that I could get up and do what I'm doing. Right. I may be tired. However, I am thankful I'm in this position to get up and do what we're doing, because a lot of people are not.
All right.
Those small changes are really what I can tell you. If I could leave you with anything of the feeling of inadequacy, it's us. Now I want to give you a magic potion, like, feel better,
Yeah. It's bittersweet. It's bittersweet.
You have to want to feel better, though. That's the one thing I say in my therapy. One thing I will say is that if you want to feel better, then come to me. But if you don't, then come to me when you're ready.
Right.
Because I can't help you then if not.
And I feel like some people miss out on the beauty that is therapy, because they don't realize it is just an internal struggle, and they might need just that third person or the second person to come in and just like wake them up a little bit.
Yes, that bird's eye
out of their heads, and then realize you are only fighting yourself. So
and that's usually what it is. It's like, who are you in this battle with? Yourself.
Yeah.
Yourself. It's usually yourself. And I want you to understand, this is difficult. This takes a lifetime worth of just trying, of trial and error and figuring this out. Days are different. Like, I'm feeling good now, who's to say in a little bit, but you just have to ride the wave a little. You just have to kind of meet the needs of the situation you're in at this moment. That's, that's where we're at. So that's what I got for you guys. I appreciate you. I hope I helped. I hope, I also have an Instagram as well. So I'm going to start getting a little bit more. Again, the imposter syndrome comes in. I get nervous on social media. I get very anxious. So I am trying to set smaller goals for myself. So if you can't do therapy, hopefully you can benefit from my therapy page.
Wait, drop the handle for us real quick.
Chat with Chris.
Chat with Chris. Love it.
White shirt on. I'm like, like a relaxed one, but I was excited when I could give I was ready for that.
Little profile. Okay.
Yes.
And Chris is, we'll put this information up, but Chris is CRYS, right? Chat with CRYS. Got you. Yes, exactly. So thank you so much, Crystal. This was great. I feel like one of the special things about this conversation was that a lot of things were so relatable, right? Your stories are so relatable. And this is how, it's not just people in the legal profession. It's this kind of topic affects everybody under the greater umbrella of mental health. So again, this was fantastic.
And a lot of people deal with it. Remember that you're not alone. I was doing research. I don't know how true it is or not, but I feel like it was very true. Maya Angelou struggled with it, and we know she's amazing. She struggled with it, like, you know, am I good enough or am I not? You know, I was reading something about it. I wanted to read more on it, but there's so many people like us that struggle with it, you know, that we just have to, you're not alone. And you have to remind yourself of that sometimes. It may feel like it. Loneliness is difficult, right? Yeah. Thoughts are like paralyzing sometimes, but you're walking, you know, or however you're getting around, you're doing it. Remind yourself of that. You know, keep going. Smile, pat yourself on the back, hug yourself. Remember to have an intimate relationship with yourself. Yeah. Remember that. You gotta have intimacy with yourself.
Yeah. It's big. That's big. Well, I think my imposter syndrome is gone. So thank you.
I'm just kidding. Thank you guys for having me on. I know I say a lot.
No more.
You know, I know I could drop a lot because when I get passionate about something, I just could kind of go. But I thank you so much for engaging or listening to me. And I hope it helps anybody else listening. And I hope it encourages everybody to get mental health, especially my men. My girls are killing it. They're in my DMs. They're in my emails.
We try.
I want y'all to come through. I love having sessions with my guys. You know, I learn a lot. You know, you'll be surprised, you know, and it helps out just a lot. So I want you guys to come. So please come. You know, not all therapists are like, you know, have this certain look. They have so many stigmas to therapy. I have fun in my therapy. You know, you want to hear a song? We want to talk about the song? Let's go. Like,
speaking of songs, what is your like break playlist? It seems like it's a good one.
Okay, see, today, listen, I might put on right now. Tink just dropped the song, but you might hear me. Some of my neighbors might walk across it. They would walk by or bring them in. What music do I listen to? They're even like, well, one day she's listening to Spanish. She's salsa dancing. The next day, I'm listening to drill music. I'm a gangster. Like next day, I'm singing. So I'm all over it. For me, I'm like a mood. I'm like a vibe. It depends on what I'm feeling. Sometimes I'll hit a podcast. Love podcasts. Sometimes they're mental health. Sometimes they're raunchy. I go everywhere. I'm the therapist that I am that therapist that I am just like you guys. And I want to remind people that I know sometimes we think therapy of the way it looks or what you see on TV. Like, I rarely ask, well, tell me how you feel. Well, actually, my friends would tell me that. I'll always be like, I wonder how they feel. But I ask it in my own ways. Like, I'm like, you can't tell me, well, play a song for me or something. Like, let's play a game real quick. Let me see how competitive you are. Let me see how you get when you're a little angry, you know? So, you know, for me, I just want to let you know that therapy is not always what you see. Therapy can be very fun. You don't have to know what you're talking about. You don't have to be going through something to come to therapy. Sometimes you just need somebody other than the people you got to talk to.
Right.
So why not?
Yeah.
My job.
I'm a huge fan. So
I enjoy it.
Thank you again. Thank you so much. If you loved what you heard today, please visit us at the Protégé ESQ on Instagram. We also have our website. If you are looking for a therapist,
I'm here.
Here we go, right here.
My waiting list is gonna come though, because you're getting booked and busy. I'm trying to take on everybody, but I'm trying to remember my self-care too. So please come. I do try to fit it in. You know, I'm a therapist that if I could work it out, I will. So please come. I'm ready for you. I invite you. Just come when you're ready.
Cool. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Bye. I'll see you guys.